All right, welcome to Advancement Tech Episode 6, Chatbots for Nonprofits. I'm going to be getting the stream set up, so if you bear with me just 1 second. Okay. And I'm just waiting for the delay to catch up, make sure things are looking good. Oh. Just checking one more thing. Make sure it looks good. So we are broadcasting on YouTube Live. If you want to chat, I will be checking the chat periodically for any questions. You do need to be logged into YouTube to be able to post a comment or chat in the text. So just keep that in mind. So welcome to Advancement Tech. Again, we look at the technology as it relates to advancement at fundraising as well as nonprofits in general. And this week, we're going to be talking about chatbots for nonprofits. So first off, welcome. Thank you for attending. First, going to go over a little background about myself. We're going to have about 15 to 20 minutes of education about chatbots. And then we're going to have a Q&A period in case anyone in the chat would like to ask any questions. All right, so who am I? My name is Preston Jameson. I've worked at 2 different universities over 12 years. I oversaw development and advancement services at those universities. Now, after that, I went ahead and founded a company, and I developed a product called Advancement Form, which does online giving and event registration. Okay, so let's talk about chatbots. So this is kind of a definition from Google or the Oxford Dictionary. It's a computer program designed to simulate conversation with human users, especially over the internet. So when you think of a chatbot, you can actually think of Alexa or Siri or Google as they're basically chatbots. Now they use voice, so sometimes people speak in terms of chatbots meaning only by texting. So there is, of course, text chat, and there are Facebook Messenger bots that basically they respond to what you're typing in to respond in some sort of way. Or there are website chatbots that you can install on your website and a user can interact with through chat. And some of these chatbots, they use some of them, not all of them, they use natural language processing or NLP to interpret the responses that they're getting from the person that they're chatting with. Now, a lot of these chatbots, they, at least at this stage of the state of the technology, they use buttons to be able to really hone in on a response, and that's more accurate. Something that actually looks at what language you're typing is much more sophisticated, and you're probably going to pay more money if you're going to be doing that. And this is how I like to think of a chatbot, is basically you're putting some sort of process into a chat interface. Now, a lot of these things that chatbots do, you could potentially do by just having a form that does it on your website. But basically it basically copies a process and does it within a chat interface. So let's look at a little bit about chat and messaging apps in general. So you may have used Facebook Messenger. That is a chat app. And again, I'm talking about not necessarily chatbots, but just different chat and messaging apps. But a lot of them have the ability to create these bots, automated responses. And I should mention, if you ever have difficulty hearing me or any issues with the audio, please feel free to mention in chat, and I will try to watch that and rectify it. Okay, WhatsApp is another messaging app that actually Facebook acquired. There's Slack, which is a chat that a lot of businesses use for communication or other communities. It's basically a chat mechanism. IRC, again, these don't use bots necessarily, but internet relay chat was something. Text messages or chat and messaging, as well as way back when, almost 20 years ago, AIM, or AOL Instant Messenger. So basically, chatbots take this real-time chat interface. You can even see way back then they called it Instant Messenger, so it's kind of like a real-time. So take this real-time chat interface and put a computer program behind it. So you don't have to talk to the person who's reaching out to you, but your computer program takes the place of doing it. So it's kind of like an automated response. Okay, so what are some of the use cases for chatbots? So I would say so these are some of the use cases. So number one, I would say, is basically customer or constituent support. So someone's contacting you and you want to respond in some way for supporting them at the questions that they may have. And we'll drill down to each of these in a second. The next is lead and prospect generation. So if someone reaches out to you on a website, one way to do it is to get a form that captures relevant information and contact them later. The other is to do it in a chat interface. So again, that's what I was saying, is that it basically takes some process and puts it behind a chat interface. You could do the exact same thing on a form, collect the same exact information because you're just asking questions, collecting responses, and sending it off all at once rather than this interactive means. Another use case is to complete some sort of process in general. Maybe you want to order something or do a survey. The other way that some of the people have used chatbots is a means of interactive education or storytelling. So they communicate something, they provide maybe some text or video, short video that you could watch, and then it waits for a response and then continues. And again, there are different ways of doing this, but a chatbot basically does it within a chat interface. Another opportunity, now this isn't necessarily only chatbots, but in terms of where kind of chat is going, particularly Facebook Messenger, for example, it has starting to become, I would say, kind of a marketing communication channel. So if you have people who are contacting you on your Facebook page, you have a means to kind of communicate back with them. And you can even pay for sponsored communications to be able to reach out to them via Facebook Messenger. Now, a lot of this, everything is still in its infancy, but it does continue to get more sophisticated, and we'll talk a little bit about that further down. So let's drill into each kind of one of these use cases. So let's look at customer constituent support. I would say this is the main use case that I see now. A lot of websites have a web chat interface on their website that you can interact with them live. Some of those, it just reaches out to the person. It doesn't necessarily show a chatbot that it asks questions for. But if you think about it, when you're doing support, sometimes websites you go to, when you ask a question, they give you a list of relevant documents and say, were one of these you're interested in or not really? And it basically guides you through how to look for support. So you can imagine that if you put something on this on your website, either by putting buttons that ask these questions or getting a more sophisticated chatbot that could actually look at support articles to drill down and present the relevant information. So for example, you see here, when is your office open? So it could potentially look at the office open hours and then respond with that answer. When is your next event? Are you a 501c3? What is your address? So a lot of this is the potential of doing it, responding in this way, being able to interpret these questions and give a relevant answer. I believe there are some programs that can do this, but I believe they're very expensive now unless you kind of make them kind of canned responses. But this is kind of what you could potentially do with a chatbot, and the technology will just get more sophisticated as things continue. Now, I do have an example of this. So if you go to Zendesk, and this is just a help desk provider, and they have a chatbot area. And for example, they show this similar example here is that someone starts a chat with them, hey, what is your return policy? And the bot is able to respond basically it looks for certain keywords, probably using the natural language processing in order to respond. You can return your items within 45 days of the ship date. I have a question about my recent bill. Okay, give me your number and I'll go ahead and forward you to billing. So you can see how it's interpreting what someone is saying in response. So this is an example of a support chatbot. The other way is doing a lead prospect generation. So someone reaches out to a website interested in potentially a service that they're offering, or maybe someone has questions about gifts. And a lot of these chatbots for these purposes, they ask qualification questions. Okay, what's your company size, or what's your role in the company? So it's basically, again, putting a process in a chat interface. It guides them through these questions as opposed to just giving them a form to fill out. And they can route visitors to the appropriate person to potentially schedule a call with them. So an example of software that does something like this is Drift, so drift.com, and it has a bot here that, for example, it asks, okay, what is your role at Acme Corp? And you have buttons that you can click on, and if the person responds sales, okay, it gives us some sort of response, how many people are on yours, and then they can respond how many people are in their company, and it collects responses in an automated fashion and then can direct the user, or even I've seen reference on the website in terms of the documentation that it can even schedule a call in a particular salesperson's calendar based upon what someone has entered. So again, it's guiding them through a process within a chat interface. Now, speaking of process, this could be pretty much any process. So, for example, they could complete a survey. Someone could start a chat and go through a survey, and it's just asking questions and responding to it with answers. I'm still thinking through how this would best work because, advancement form is the product that I developed for online event registrations, but you could do a chat interface for registering for event. And what would that look like? And is that more advantageous versus filling out a form? So this is also a potential process, or even giving a gift. It depends on the complexity of information you ask when giving a gift, but this could also be done through a chat interface if you so choose. And depending upon what interface you're using, you may need to eventually direct them to a website to complete, maybe for entering payment information. Depends on the platform that you're using for doing the chat. But this is another potential consideration. So any process that your nonprofit or organization does, you could put into give it chatbot responsibility for doing it. Another example is interactive or educational storytelling. So you could essentially guide a visitor through an experience within that chat interface. And an example of this is Charity Water. So they had, I believe on their Facebook page, they have a chatbot that you can go through that basically has a example of a story of someone walking to collect water for where they live. And then at some point during that educational experience, I believe they asked for a donation. So that is an example of how chatbots can be used in a perhaps innovative way. And the next is marketing communications. So this isn't necessarily chatbot related, but when you start looking into using chat with someone and responding to it, it does open up a marketing or communication channel where you're doing it on a platform. So for example, Facebook Messenger is a chat-based platform and a communication platform. And as people communicate with you, you can communicate with them. So it does open it up as an additional marketing or communication channel. And basically the thought is you market to people where they are or where they're hanging out. So if someone contacted you via Facebook Messenger, well, then that is a tool they use and where they spend some time. So perhaps they are okay receiving messages through Facebook Messenger from your organization. Now, there are some rules, at least with regard to Facebook Messenger, when you can respond and whatnot. but it also offers some opportunity for promotional messages, but of course there are costs involved with doing that. Okay, so I want to take a second and talk a little bit about the hype cycle, because when I was researching more in depth on this subject, I saw a lot of references or videos that were talking about, oh, you have to have a chatbot. If you don't have a chatbot, you're going to be left behind. And so hearing and looking at these things, it just gave me a sense of, or reminded me of going back to Gartner's hype cycle. So for example, Gartner has this hype cycle. So there's some innovation that is triggered. So chatbots came into being. Someone had the idea and someone started using it. And then the expectations start rising incredibly fast. So much so that you have a peak of inflated expectations. Like people think it's going to do everything for them. It includes everything but the kitchen sink. All you need to do is this, you know, so incredibly inflated expectations. And again, this is across time. But then as people are using it and seeing, all right, where is it really useful? Where is it not useful? Then you start getting into the trough of disillusionment. So you're saying, you know, it's not really great as what people thought it would be. But again, there's then this slope. Eventually, there's the slope of enlightenment where you identify exactly where this technology is useful and how it can be used. And then the plateau of productivity where it's basically a productive piece of technology and you know how and when and where to use it. I would say with chatbots, we're probably somewhere in here. I don't know if we've started falling down yet, perhaps, but I'd say we're about right here in terms of identifying what the expectations are and what it can do. I think very quickly it could offer huge opportunities and benefits, particularly with related to natural language processing. Like, imagine you could tell a chatbot to look at your website and analyze it, and then 80% of your customers' questions could be answered just by using a chatbot because it knows your website so well and could, like, say, what's your return policy? When are you open? When's your next event? And it would interpret that and automatically know where to find the answer and respond to it. That's kind of the vision of what would really be great. Now, there may be some software that can get that close. Like, for example, this particular support desk service actually integrates with other partners that they may have the technology that can do a lot of this, but I think you're probably going to be paying a fair amount of money for it. So anyway, when looking at newer technology, I always think of this, okay, what stage are we at in here? So it's just something to keep in mind as you examine potentially using chatbots. Okay. So do you want to get started? Do you want to start using a chatbot? So my inclination would be, if you want to start using one, maybe try website customer support first. So get a support software or that can put a chat interface on your website to respond to questions, and find a vendor that offers this functionality. Now, it may be relatively simple where it's just buttons that people click on to say what kind of questions they want to ask. Like, it may not be natural language, but a button that allows them to respond to questions. But that could, depending on the kind of questions you're getting on your website, that may be enough. Or there's also support desk operators or software solutions that allow you to type a question and it looks up, do you have a support document with keywords in there? And it gives those support documents as suggestions. That's another place to start. Again, it doesn't reach the, envision of natural language processing and interpreting exactly what the person typed and then responding to it, but it kind of starts getting there. Another way you could potentially start is, do you want to do something with Facebook? It's maybe some type of interactive experience. Well, you could develop a Facebook Messenger bot to do that. Now, they do have an API, which is an application programming interface, to be able to develop a Messenger bot. But I did find this vendor. Again, I've never used this vendor, but this is a particular vendor that allows you to build your own messenger bot using interactive tools like they proclaim here. For example, create your bot in 2 minutes without coding. So it's basically a drag and drop interface to create a messenger bot. Okay. All right, so I guess the ultimate question is, should our nonprofit use a chatbot? So I would say, do you want to offer an automated real-time communication mechanism? Now, some of these, they're not necessarily chatbots, but you could offer live chat that actually directly contacts someone at your organization. The advantage of having a bot behind it is that you don't have to have a person that immediately responds. So a chatbot would enable this type of response to your constituent or your clients in real time. Are you receiving messages to your Facebook page? What are they? What do they contain? Do you want to potentially offer an automated response based upon the kinds of questions you receive or get? So this may be another reason to check out a chatbot. Do you have difficulty addressing customer constituent questions due to volume? So if you have a high volume, perhaps these types of automated chatbots could help streamline your support or minimize where a staff member has to directly respond to a question. The other thing to consider is, do you think this medium offers a way to convey your mission to your customers or constituents? I'm thinking about the charity water example. So is that something you think you may want to do for your organization? Then maybe you would potentially want to use a chatbot. All right, so now it is time for questions. So if you have questions about any of the content I presented, please feel free to post in the chat and I will look for them. Now, in terms of upcoming shows, the next show that's coming up is What is Open Source Software? And that will be taking place next Friday, March 8th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So basically, we're going to be looking at what open source software is. Basically, it's software that the source code is open to people, but a lot of what that means is it's usually built by a community of people, and there's no one company a lot of times behind it. And sometimes what this means is that a lot of the software is free. So given that nonprofits are always looking at as a way to operate more efficiently, maybe you want to consider using open source software for some of your projects that you're working on or some of the software that you use in your organization. In terms of the Friday thereafter, we're looking for suggestions. So if you have a suggestion on what to present in one of the next shows on advancement tech, please feel free to mention it in the comments of this episode if you're watching, to suggest what we should be working on next. All right, I don't see anything in the chat right now, so I think we will close that out for this week. If you want to get notifications of upcoming episodes as well as historical episodes that have run, be sure to go to advtech.tv and you can sign up to receive email notifications when those shows are posted and coming out. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, it would be great if you could give a like to this video and potentially subscribe to the channel, because we are trying to grow it and basically provide a great means of communication for people. All right, so that is it. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will see you next Friday.